Hey everyone! Today we're exploring a fascinating and eerie topic. What happens when you buy or rent a house only to discover later that it has a tragic or supernatural history? Can you terminate the agreement or sue the seller or landlord? What do Singapore laws say about this? To make things more intriguing, we'll also discuss infamous cases like the Adrian Lim murders and examine whether buyers or tenants in Singapore have any legal rights in such situations. Let's start with the New York case of Stambovsky versus Ackley. Jeffrey Stambovsky bought a house in New York only to later learn that it was widely regarded as haunted. The seller, Helen Ackley, had publicly promoted the house's paranormal reputation in local newspapers and even in a national magazine. However, she did not disclose this to Stambovsky during the sale. Stambovsky wanted to cancel the purchase agreement, claiming that the seller's failure to disclose the house's haunted reputation materially affected the property's value. The New York Appellate Court ruled in favor of Stambovsky, holding that because the seller actively promoted the house as haunted, it had become a material fact that needed disclosure. The court allowed Stambovsky to cancel the contract, famously stating, "As a matter of law, the house is haunted." The takeaway from this case is that in jurisdictions where material misrepresentation applies, public knowledge about paranormal activity can make non-disclosure a legal issue. In the Pennsylvania case of Milliken versus Jacono, the Millikens bought a home in Pennsylvania where the previous owner had committed a murder-suicide. The sellers did not disclose this during the transaction, and the Millikens sued after learning about the property's history, claiming that it diminished the home's value. The case centered on whether psychological stigma, i.e. murder or haunting, constitutes a material defect requiring disclosure. The court ruled in favor of the sellers, stating that psychological stigma does not count as a physical defect and is not required to be disclosed under Pennsylvania law. The takeaway here is that laws vary by jurisdiction, and non-physical issues like hauntings may not require disclosure unless explicitly mandated. Moving on to Singapore, let's start with the chilling case of Adrian Lim, one of Singapore's most infamous murderers. In 1981, Adrian Lim, a self-proclaimed medium, and his accomplices committed ritualistic murders of 2 children in a flat in Toa Payoh. The case shocked the nation due to the gruesome nature of the crimes, and the flat was left with a lasting stigma. Although the property was resold, there was no legal requirement for the seller to disclose its macabre history. This is just one example of how properties associated with tragedy often face challenges in the market, not because of any legal obligation, but due to social perceptions. Similarly, in 2017, the Yishun double murder case, where a man killed his wife and mother-in-law in their flat before attempting suicide, left the property stigmatized. Buyers were hesitant even though legally there was no requirement for the seller to disclose the incident. Another example is the series of suicides at Bedok Reservoir in 2011, which cast a shadow over nearby housing estates. While these properties were not directly involved in the incidents, the psychological association with the suicides affected their desirability. In Singapore, sellers and landlords are not legally obligated to disclose non-physical defects like a property's tragic or supernatural history. The principle of caveat emptor or buyer beware places the burden on buyers and tenants to conduct their own due diligence. Unless the seller or landlord makes a false statement of fact that induces the transaction, they are generally not liable for withholding information about the property's past. For example, if a seller is directly asked whether a murder occurred in the house and they lie, this could amount to a misrepresentation. However, silence on such matters is not considered misrepresentation under Singapore law. This approach contrasts sharply with countries like the United States, Japan, and Hong Kong, where there are specific rules about disclosing stigmatized property histories. In California, for example, sellers must disclose any deaths on the property within the past 3 years. Japan mandates disclosure of unnatural deaths, and in Hong Kong, sellers must answer truthfully if asked about the property's history. Singapore's approach is more pragmatic, focusing on physical defects rather than psychological stigma. Should sellers and landlords disclose such information, even if not legally required? While transparency might deter some buyers and reduce property value, it can also build trust and prevent future disputes. From a practical perspective, disclosing a property's history might be seen as ethical but not legally necessary under current Singapore laws. Buyers and tenants should take proactive steps to research a property's history if such concerns are important to them. For sellers, it's important to balance ethical considerations with practical realities. Ultimately, this topic raises an interesting debate between legal obligations and ethical considerations. Singapore's legal framework prioritizes caveat emptor, while cultural shifts towards greater transparency in real estate transactions may benefit both buyers and sellers in the long term. Whether it's a haunted house or a property with a tragic past, the legal system in Singapore focuses on evidence and practicality, leaving the moral debate for the individuals involved. Thank you for joining me on this exploration on haunted houses and the law. If you are buying or renting property in Singapore, remember to ask questions and do your own research. What do you think? Should sellers and landlords disclose a property's dark past? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more legal insights. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.